Hello, everyone. So we will be talking about finite state machines. So I am Frederick Raducki. I'm a game designer in Boombit. And those are a few examples of game I worked recently. I'm specialized in mobile games. And I was pretending to be a dev, trying to learn code since the very beginning of my adventure in the game industry. So today will not be a technical talk, but rather the experience with finite state machines of a game designer who prototypes. About Boombit just for a moment. So we are a mobile game developer and publisher, and we have more than 1 billion downloads lifetime of our titles. And of course, you can meet us, visit our booth next to the red hall here on the event. The talk of today, first I will introduce what are FSMs, why, when, and who should use them in game productions, and give a few examples of how you can use finite state machines in a Unity project using PlayMaker plugin in this case. And at the end, we will finish with some takeaways that I hope can inspire some to use FSMs if they didn't use them before. So just a quick question in the audience. So who is familiar with FSMs or used them in projects before? Okay, cool. And I hope the rest of people will be convinced that it's useful to use them. So what is a finite state machine? So it's a mathematical model of computation, an abstract machine that can be in exactly one state at any given time. So this is a very important first concept. And second thing, that this FSM can change from one state to another in response to some inputs. So based on that, I have a small example here in video, which is not related to the game industry, but this is an example of, let's say, automation, because FSMs are most often used in the automation industry. So here we have this well-known example in a Polish shop of a machine failing to make a proper cycle. So here we can look that, let's say, a FSM looks like a sort of diagram. The client probably ordered in the beginning, paid, and then the machine executes step by step. So now putting sausage in bread, you can see that in this case, maybe the FSM could be a bit more optimized because, there is no, we will come back to that later in the presentation, that in between states you can have sort of tests, like in which state are we, what are we doing, what is the code doing. So here I will just finish, let this finish for the example. Back up. So, as we can see, the state machine of this machine worked, but not the expected way. So, to continue, now an example which is more connected with our industry. For example, if we had a finite state machine of this famous plumber here, we could say that he can be only in one unique state at a time. So, for example, taking the flower, taking the mushrooms, or taking the feather. So what would we use a state machine in this case in order to not have such things like that? For example, to enter into some unpredicted states, some glitched states that are not part of what we want. So why and when should we use them? So first of all, it's not only for clean code, because there's all this literature about coding, which says that finite state machines are cool, but I see, as a game designer, from my perspective, I see way more things than only clean code. For example, this FSM can be an alive documentation of the project. So during the whole course of the project, let's say you keep a diagram not only on a document, but also inside the project. Also, it allows to avoid code and game loop logic getting totally out of control. So as a wannabe developer, I started to use those coroutines in Unity, but all those things started to be like coroutine spaghetti because they were called another coroutine called another one, and then it only exists in my head and in the computer. So it's like a black box. You don't really know if you don't put a million of debug lines to the console, you don't really know what is in which state. Of course, it allows to debug easily because newcomers, developer coming on the project will thank you for having this visual support. And then it allows to enter and leave each state in a very clean way. So for example, for this poor little robot, he could test if the sausage was really in the bread before proceeding to the next step. And so you should ask yourself, like, what is the project size? What is the organization size? What are the type of gameplays? Because FSMs don't really match all cases. If you have a real-time game, maybe it's not so useful, but if you have a turn-based game, it's very useful. I did a prototype of a tic-tac-toe game, so this was very useful to know that, okay, now player plays, now the AI plays, and now it's cinematic time, resolving the board. Of course, you can use FSM for different parts of the project, for just in-game, but also for out-game, for the decision of the AI. This is an example of, this is how PlayMaker looks and shows the FSMs inside Unity. And as I said, everyone can take benefit from that, from the developer to the game designer, maybe to artist, to QA, because you have a common language here. You can all look together at that and see in which state there is exactly a problem and try to solve it together. Now I will show a few examples of how it could be used in Unity. At start, why I switched to PlayMaker plugin, because actually some people said that with the animator, you can use that as a state machine, but when I researched the internet, it looks like for 10 years people are trying to do this and use sort of hash short name of a state to know in which state they are. But look at that mess. I mean, this is dedicated to animations, so the debug, the maintenance of this is a struggle and barely readable. This is how PlayMaker plugin works. It looks, so as you can see, you can even color the different states. In that case, I had, for example, player turn in blue, AI turn in red, and the cinematic, let's say, director in that colors. And we loop like that. We distribute turns. Of course, in the code, you can easily check here, for example, in which state exactly is this function executing. So this is very interesting because if the function executes in some moment that is not supposed to do that, you can, debug that or make a debug or log error and stop your code and just you fall in some unexpected state. So here you can analyze, okay, why my game goes into that state at that point. We have very often examples in project where you see the player is dead, and in the same time pressed maybe pause, and in the same time maybe an advertisement pop out. So you have those things, overlapping each other. One interesting thing in FSM log is that you have, in PlayMaker plugin, is that you have this FSM log. So here you can see that with colors, you can see exactly by which states the code went, and you can see how it exited each state. So for example, in that state, I have two possible outcomes, and I can see here which state it used. And using, of course, your custom colors. Also, you can actually activate a sort of time machine here, a debug mode of FSM, of PlayMaker FSM. And if you click on each of those lines, you can, in the inspector of Unity, you can review in which actual values, each variable, what were the values of each variable. So very interesting. Also, for mobile, for example, if you are outside of the Unity editor, you can easily communicate once again with your team, with the QA, with the designer, because you could display the debug console directly on the device. So there are plugins for that, even free ones. And here you can log anything you want. So if the QA tester comes back to you and says, I don't know, the game is stuck in this exact moment, you can just look at what were the last things that occurred inside the finite state machine and really easily, come back to your state machine and your code and adjust things. Also, okay, using the FSM is like no-brainer, let's say, but then you can use FSMs or FSM inside an FSM or FSM in FSM in FSM, and that goes on. For example, here you can have like one FSM to rule them all, which includes, the out game, and in game is just one component of it, one state. We transit from menu 1, menu 2, settings, we go in game, and once we are inside in game, this FSM can just go on pause and wait for his turn, and then we have the whole in-game logic here, so maybe level upping, having game over, or the AI turn, going into pause. And once again, when you are inside that, you can have another FSM even included, inception of FSMs, to handle, for example, the AI turn. So, for example, you can make even a sort of decisional tree for the AI. So in my example of tic-tac-toe prototype, here the AI was asking itself what places of the boards are available for me to put a cross or a square or a circle, should pick an action and make his move. Also, another interesting thing inside this PlayMaker plugin is this view. It's the timeline view. So you can see here you have time here, and when you play your code, you execute the code in Unity, you can see, for example, this was the first time user experienced the tutorial, let's say, line. So this is one FSM. And here you have the main loop. So in a very colorful way, you can see, by which state actually the FSM machine transited and when. Does it fit your expectations and does it generate any bugs? And I'm going quite fast, so we are almost at the takeaways. So actually for the takeaways, it's important also to avoid this spaghetti FSMs, otherwise you finish like that, analyzing your project. I advise to organize really nicely in space and by features and use the states and transition colors, so that as a designer I'm very visual guy, so I like to look at that in this view of FSM, PlayMaker FSM view. Also, I wanted to mention that actually this is applicable to any other plugin or engines. Yeah, it's not only about Unity and PlayMaker. You can actually, with the visual scripting tool with Bolt in Unity, probably do that. I didn't try it. Of course, with the Unreal Engine, with any engine you can use those FSMs. It's not a problem. But actually, it's nice to pick one which has additional tools, as we saw with this already available debug modules or views. Also, you can use connecting the topic who can benefit from FSMs and state machines. You can also involve, let's say, the analytics side of your company. For example, connecting, the FSMs with some, Firebase or Game Analytics or any other service that you are using. So here it's a really perfect occasion to branch and inject, connect, the events sent to some dashboards using the FSM. So once again, here it offers a way for a discussion, for a common language, at which moment of the game execution should those events be sent. Because very often, when we work as a designer with also analytics, there are some times where the vision of the person, the designer, is not always the one implemented in the end in the code. So we don't always agree or understood each other at which moment exactly should be sent an event, for example, for game ended or victory or lose. Sometimes there is interstitial in between and stuff like that, so it's not always clear. So here, for me, it's a perfect tool to use FSM and state machines. And actually, we are at the end of the presentations. So thanks a lot for your attention. And if you have any questions on that, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. So do we have, so many people. Do we have any questions from the audience to Frederic? Okay, I see the first question.
Hello. So it's probably a bit hard to formulate that question, but I'll try. So let's say we have a predefined set of states, for example, 10 of them. And the requirement says that sometimes when some check passes, we need to intervene and add some state between state 1 and 2, or probably third and fourth one. Mm-hmm. So do you have a clear solution to that? Or probably, I mean, inside a state machine, or probably it's a good idea to avoid using state machine at all. Is it my question clear?
Can you maybe, is it about the type of games maybe we are doing, or is it just...
For example, we are talking about game loop. For example, we have some states, for example, I don't know, like map, level, something else, and we check some calls from server, for example, we wait for it, and when we have any, we show pop-up and we go inside there some other state, between predefined states.
Okay.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, actually.
Okay, thanks.
Because as I said before, very often, for example, when I have a state, I try to create, let's say, a previous state and a state just after, which, like cleans out everything and makes sure, like a sort of, let's say, how to call that, integrity check of everything that's going on. And in the moment where, for example, you send the request to a server, you could just loop inside that one state for a certain time, yeah?
Should I add this checking state for after every predefined state? For example, first state, checking state. Second state,
checking state.
Well,
it seems not so...
Here, I agree that there is a sort of, let's say, dilemma, in the size of this state machine that we can create. So, for example, in one state, I would advise maybe to create, a sub, as I said, a sub FSM that is in charge of this, let's say, server connection. And I assume that if the server connection fails, you can nevertheless continue, in your loop. Sure. So here you can have different, let's say, exit transitions from that state. Say, okay, if the server connection succeeded, let's do this. And if the server connection failed, maybe we have a backup, maybe we display some default pop-up or something, or I don't know if it's connected with ads or not in that case in your question. But yeah,
okay.
I hope I
sort of
answered the question.
Thank you for your talk. You told us about like node editors for FSMs, but what do you think about code-centric approach where you define all transitions via the code?
Yeah, well, as I said, as a non-developer, let's say I tried, doing, let's say, dirty code in that direction. But anyways, in the end, it's the code, because with PlayMaker, as we know, this is branded. This plugin is branded for non-coders to do games in Unity. So I agree that you could rely only on, let's say, PlayMaker plugin. But in my case, I just use it as an overall, let's say, structure. And inside, I obviously use, scripts, and a script which is waiting, waiting for a certain, let's say, Boolean to turn on or something, that his job is done. And then the script informs the FSM that, okay, for that state, I completed absolutely everything that I needed to do, to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I see one.
Thank you very much. I have a question which will be a bit broader, I think. because this kind of visual tools are actually perfect if the team scales, and because it's easy to just look at the thing and know what's happening for all the people in team. However, sometimes in the very small teams or solo games, it's for me, it's quite of a burden actually, but I can see the benefits of it while it scales up. But actually, the question would be, have you maybe worked with GOP and other approaches to state management, and how these tools actually could be combined with them? Do you have any experience with that?
What's the name? Because
GOP. It's more for the AI stuff and
Okay.
planning the actions.
So since I'm asking the question, is that obviously I didn't.
Yeah, okay.
So here I'm not able to answer, because as I said, it's from a game designer trying to prototype the best way he can, and not from developer perspective. So in that case, I don't know, sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again. Big round of applause for Frederic.